Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third day of the European Mission Soil Week. My name is Arwin Jones. I work for the European Commission's Joint Research Centre, which hosts the EU Soil Observatory that you've been hearing about over the past couple of days. And I'm giving Sasha a bit of morning off and to try and moderate you through the next set of presentations. Apologies for my newsreader fashion style. I had some surgery on my leg and I can't fit into trousers yet, but so just look at me from the waist up and okay. So thank you for making the effort to be here. It's been a grueling event, and we appreciate the fact that you make the effort to be here for today. Today has a slightly different twist to it. The Soil Observatory colleagues and myself have tried to bring together, let's say, an additional perspective to the mission, because as you've seen this circular diagram being presented several times, the Soil Observatory is an integral part of the soil activities at the EU level. And we're very much, let's say, benefiting both from the research, but also supporting the outcomes of all the mission projects as well. So today we will give you, this morning rather, we will give you a slight overview of, let's say, what's been happening at the Soil Observatory over the past year. And then we've brought together two of the initial projects from the mission, AI for Soil, and the benchmarks projects, which are funded under the same call, looking at indicators and thresholds for soil health, to organize a mini workshop, let's say, looking at the issue of scales at a European level, and also then at the topic of indicators and thresholds from a panel discussion. I remind you also that there's the opportunity in the coffee breaks and at lunch to meet the two other projects, Islander and, Lois, yeah. Lois. So please do take the opportunity to engage with both of those projects as well. And there's still the photo display outside, so if you haven't had a look yet, please go back and have a look at that. In terms of housekeeping, I don't know, is there a housekeeping slide coming up? Please mute your phones so we don't get any interruptions. Please remember that we have Slido for people online. If you want to ask any questions or leave any comments, please do so. And website and the code are on the screen at the moment. And for those of you who still need internet access, the details are there. Okay, so without any more ado, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague Panos Panagos, and he will provide you with a summary of what's happening at the Soil Observatory over the past year. Panos, over to you.
Many thanks, Arwin. Many thanks, colleagues, for being here. I know it's the last day. Thank you for resisting, and thank you for being numerous here, and thanks also to the colleagues who are online and following us. So, I will provide an overview of the EU Soil Observatory and what we have done during the last 2 years, and mostly insisting on the last year, of course. So, why we have the EU Soil Observatory? We have the EU Soil Observatory in order to provide knowledge for soil policy. It's a small group in GRC in ISPRA, the European Commission, and this group, for a long time, provides support to our colleagues in Brussels, in various DGs, but at a certain point, we decided that somehow this support should be streamlined through the EU Soil Observatory. And we have done this, let's say, this structure with 5 main objectives. So, to provide EU soil monitoring, to monitor soil health policies, to have a stronger data center, because we have a history with the European Soil Data Center. Of course, we are a research institute and we do research and innovation, and of course, at the end, to have a stakeholder forum. Those are the 5 objectives that will be presented in the next slides. So just to recall, you may have seen this slide during the previous days. We present now in a better infographics way. We are well positioned in this nice puzzle, and you can see that the policy framework for soil health in Europe, currently supported by EU soil strategy and the soil monitoring law. Of course, we have the excellent mechanism of soil mission. That's why we are here, to provide funds for research and innovation, and of course, the citizen engagement and outreach. And the last piece in this nice puzzle is the EU Soil Observatory. And our objective is the knowledge management, the policy support, and the soil monitoring, which will take place with data and legacy repository as well. So in this nice puzzle, we are well positioned, but the expectations are quite a lot for us. And we have to support those expectations during the next years. What we have done during the last year, the EU Soil Observatory was announced in 2020, was launched in 2021. We have run last year, the first year, now is the second year. And here are the three main highlights. In the nice bulletin, we drafted all the activities that we have done in 2022, and you can download through this QR code. Actually, after this meeting, we go back in ISPRA and we start drafting the next bulletin, which will be published, I hope, in the early 24. Drafting, of course, what we have done in 23. The second highlight, of course, is the dashboard. It has been presented in many presentations. It has been highlighted as an important outcome. And the third main activity of our work was the support to the soil monitoring law. Regarding the support to the monitoring law, we had during the last year, I can say, a very busy year with close collaborations with our colleagues in DG Environment and the Environmental Agency, providing, of course, scientific evidence, data, documents, assessments, ad hoc assessments. You can imagine, in order to build such a proposal, you need scientific evidence, and we have been in close collaboration with them. I can count more than 100 responses on technical questions and conceptual questions. And of course, we supported as well the impact assessment. If you see the impact assessment of the soil monitoring law, has a lot of evidence that we had a lot of input there. And now we're in the phase where the soil monitoring law is in this trilogue process. The European Union, we have the trilogue, the Commission proposed and the European Parliament votes and the Council approves, where we start receiving as well the questions coming from the European Parliament, and we have to respond also in this trilogue process. So it will be quite long, and it will keep us busy for the next years. But it's not only the soil monitoring law. With our colleagues in the mission, we have provided support in different policies. So we had the first evaluation and assessment of the soil mission this summer, and with the soil mission secretariat, we were able to provide support in order to do this evaluation. Of course, we contributed to the nature restoration law. We coordinated the clean soil outlook, which is a part for the zero pollution outlook. We contributed to the carbon removal certification. We had a session the first day regarding carbon removal with DG Klima, and we have contributed quite a lot with the knowledge there. Of course, we delivered the soil organic carbon indicators for the CAP performance. And in farm to fork as well, we have developed assessments on pesticides and nutrient indicators. So those are some of the policies that we have contributed. We do much more, but those are the highlights. Regarding the dashboard, we have seen this slide many times, but just to recall, this is the latest state of the art based on the knowledge that we know at European scale. We started in summer 2020. There was a small group which start assessing and putting together all the soil threats, and we assess that between 60 and 70% of the EU soils are currently in non-healthy condition. Of course, this is far from being perfect. We acknowledge this. But it's the first dashboard that shows to policymakers where we are. And this is very important, in a simple way, to have an impact. Our role now is to improve this dashboard. And I'm sure that during the next years, with the help of the projects, the soil mission projects will do much more, because there are assessments to be done, specifically in soil contamination, pesticides. In other assessments like biodiversity, we have to improve soil compaction. So there is room to improve, and I'm counting on the projects that we can collaborate better and have an impact and change here. Of course, the visualization and the functionality of the dashboard will improve with our technical knowledge, but the content as well has to be improved. Regarding soil monitoring, you know very well Lucas. Lucas has been a revolution for us. Me, Arwin, and Luca at 2007, when we proposed Lucas Soil, we couldn't imagine such an impact. Without Lucas, we couldn't be here because we couldn't have assessments on soil health. So Lucas had a huge impact. In last year, we concluded the assessment of 2022. Previously, I recall that we had already the campaigns of 2009, 2015, and 2018 already available. But last year, we concluded the 22 assessment, and now we have to do the laboratory analysis and the quality assessment of the results. We collaborate closely with EGP Soil for comparing the Lucas with their findings, of course. And Lucas is let's say, our tool to fine-tune and to provide evidence, scientific evidence, we can say like this, in different needs, which comes from the soil monitoring law and from other policies as well. We contributed with Lucas to the Environmental Agency Zero Pollution Monitoring Report, and with Lucas we are able also to provide, to publish new novel datasets. And Lucas has been a nice model, also for Switzerland in the past, Norway, North for Soil and Prima projects. Those projects would like to adopt somehow the protocols, our experience on Lucas, and much more. Regarding soil monitoring, we have done quite an impressive study last year, and we were able to see the difference of soil organic carbon between 2009 and 2018. This was quite important because it was not based just on modeling, but on measured data of Lucas. It was a huge work because we had to do a very good quality assessment of the points. And in agricultural soils, we have seen this. Of course, there is a small loss, but it says loss. And somehow, this loss should be taken into account in order to provide, to react and to have some mitigation measures. Regarding supporting innovation, we steer the research agenda, and we collaborate closely with the Mission Secretariat, of course, here. We have we have a contribution to the Mission Annual Work Program, and GRC is responsible as well for the soil monitoring elements in the soil mission, the third objective of the mission. And EUSO, the European Soil Observatory, can be seen as a beneficiary of the outputs of the soil mission projects. A very important project for us is SoilWise. It's SoilWise because we should collaborate very closely with SoilWise. I hope that during those days and during the last week that we had the stakeholder forum, things become clearer about the role of SoilWise and about the role of EUSO, but we count on SoilWise for the development of the data repository, regarding the data repository that the soil mission project will produce with the data and knowledge. And last, we have done also a nice review of what happened during the last 40 years in research in relation to soils. And we have seen a real good investment from the EU. And this investment now becomes exponential with the soil mission. And we hope that we have some important and concrete results in the near future. We're a research group, not big one, 10, 12 people, but with impressive production. We have produced more than 40 publications last year, but for me, the numbers sometimes do not say the truth, but some of them, they had an impact. They were published in very high-impact journals. We co-host as well 6 PhD students in collaboration with hosting universities, and this was quite a nice hybrid program, and we try to convince our hierarchy that this should be continued. And we support as well the implementation of soil mission with novel approaches for soil monitoring, data acquisition, metrics on indicators, etc. And the last point, which I think is very close to what you do, is a close collaboration with the soil mission projects, because most of the soil mission projects have a strong research component, and we want this close collaboration. I just list some of the projects, but I think there are much more with the soil mission projects, and we hope that we have strong linkages, and at the end, they also could be the beneficiary of the outputs of the soil mission projects. So, in our group as well, as I explained, we do some research in order to provide evidence for new policy questions, and one of the novel assessments was the pesticides assessment. And this was based, again, based on Lucas. So new information, new indicators may come from this. This is just an output of the pesticides incidence by country or content by country, but we hope to have more specialized information in the near future, and we count that we can do much more on this. Another important work on this topic was the biodiversity assessment. This was done with almost 800 samples that we analyzed from DNA, again with Lucas. And we have seen quite some interesting results, that diversity increase with land use intensification, the increase in pathogens in agricultural soils, the strong effect of soil properties on biodiversity, but also the climate effect and land cover are very relevant. And of course, the pH was the strongest driver. And this was published in two highlights, one Nature Communication, another one in Global Change Biology. It's not only biodiversity and contamination, but also on carbon. So the impact of climate or the climate sensitivity in soil organic matter was assessed with this interesting work in Nature Geoscience, a work that I'm proud of because it's relevant to my work on soil erosion that we do for a long time, to assess not just the impact of water erosion, but the impact also of wind, tillage erosion, gully erosion, or soil loss by crop harvesting, and to put all together and to demonstrate the impact of soil loss by erosion in agricultural soils. And finally, on the right one, we had the request to develop the phosphorus budget in the context of the farm to fork. There is this request to reduce nutrient losses, and we had to do some work there in order to provide better assessments on phosphorus budget and phosphorus losses. We go to the next component, next objective of the EU Soil Observatory, which has to do with a stronger European Soil Data Center. We established the European Soil Data Center in 2010, of course with few data sets, but in 10 years' time we have done an enormous progress. So we have seen that the European Soil Data Center, which is a component of EUSO, is also in the core of many policies, and we have seen an increase in order of magnitude in data and users, makes us quite proud, also in the GRC, because it's one of the most visited and highlighted websites. And we count in the future with ESDAC 2.0, we have new data flows, not only from the mission, but also coming from the soil monitoring law and the integrated monitoring that we expect having with member states. And the metrics, how we evaluate the ESDAC, the metrics of ESDAC said that currently we provide more than 108 blocks of data, more than 70,000 data downloads, 300,000 visitors annually, etc. You can see the exponential increase, which is quite satisfactory for us. And on the corner down, there's a newsletter I produce once per month. It's a simple one. If you are not subscribed, drop me an mail, and it's very easy, and we keep colleagues informed about what we produce. So in 2023, we have produced quite interesting data sets, focusing on soil health mostly. For example, I give some examples: the zinc concentration, cover crops, tillage erosion, carbon changes, the erosion, the historical erosion, of course, the data on DNA, as well global assessments. And on the right side, you can see how we categorize the products that we have in ESDAC. There are soil point data like Lucas, soil physical, chemical properties, soil function, soil threats. Of course, we want to include different aspects here, and we hope that in the next years this will be achieved. I go to the last objective of the EUSO, which has to do with citizen engagement and awareness raising, which is very important. I mean, we should not neglect this. And we do this with support increased soil literacy and dialogue with stakeholders, fully supporting, of course, the actions of the soil strategy and the mission. We participate as much as possible as we can, because it's not possible to participate in any event, in important events like the EU Green Week, the REMTech, which is an important conference, and the Ecomondo. In November was an important conference as well on Ecomondo. And jointly, we start working as well with mission projects like ECHO. So jointly, we develop a repository with citizen science projects on soil. So it's just an action that shows how things can work. In addition, we have a long series of atlases, and these atlases are quite popular in the European Commission. You can see also in high-level commissioner or minister, sometimes those atlases are featuring. And last year, we also organized the GRC summer school on evaluation of soil, water, and air pollution in the context of EU Green Deal. Of course, we are also very active in the social media, so please follow us. And sometimes the social media have also an impact to disseminate easily information. Something that was not mentioned during the last 2 days, but I would like to underline, is the young generation. I mean, I know most of you for a long time, I'm working for 20 years. In 2021, in the first forum, we did an experiment, and we had dedicated 1 day in young researchers. Young researchers means PhD students or PhDs which have at least maximum 3 years their PhD. And we have, even if it was a limited time announcing the Young Forum, just 1 month, we had a huge participation of 100 young researchers, young soil researchers, in 4 subjects: soil erosion, carbon, biodiversity monitoring, and contamination. And those colleagues submitted more than 100 abstracts, 58 presentations, a nice interaction. And then we decided to publish a special issue with 9 papers published. And this took place in the first EUSO forum, but we are willing in 2024 to give space to young researchers, and I hope that this will have an impact, because with young researchers, the next generation will take over what we produce now, and we hope that this young generation will continue our work, of course. So, last week we ran the 3rd stakeholder forum online, more than 700 participants, impressive numbers. There were sessions with 160, 180 participants online at the same moment, more than 60 presentations, and 6 technical working groups. For first time, we had quite important involvement of the soil mission projects. So soil mission projects were called in different working groups, what you can see here. Please stay for the afternoon session, because there will give more details how the working groups, how the soil mission projects had an actual participation. So this was quite an important achievement. And then we don't operate only in EU, we do also work at global scale. Congratulations to Argon for this nice piece. Soil Observatory was presented in FAO. It's one of the best highlights this year, and was really an important output. And of course, in soil erosion, which is my passion, we continue to do a lot of work on global scale, on water, wind erosion, tillage, and all the processes as well. So this is a slide that how we see here in EUSO that things can go. We started with important assessments in 2015 in ESDAC. Based on those assessments, we develop this dashboard. Yes. And then the dashboard, we expect to be updated with important outputs. I just mentioned 2 or 3 projects here, but I expect all the projects to participate. So in the next 2 or 3 years, we have expectations that the projects can contribute to the to the dashboard. And of course, I hope that in 2030, when we have the soil monitoring law, we'll have in place important assessments and we'll be able to respond to policymakers. So, what is next for us? The Lucas 2.0, the updated soil health dashboard. Of course, we'll continue to update ESDAC. We'll have plans for a policy dashboard as well. And that's important for you, increased interactions with the soil mission projects. So finally, some outputs for the next year. For us, it's important that we produce the land degradation desertification assessment, soil carbon baseline assessments, on biodiversity and antimicrobial resistance, and of course, the first one, the report, which will give input for the state of environment in Europe and the FAO. So finally, I would like to thank all my colleagues. Some of my colleagues, Cristiano, Alberto, Cristina, and Piotr are here, but some of colleagues follow online, for the impressive work and the impressive dedication to EUSO. And thanks for all of you that follow us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panos, for that comprehensive presentation. We can take maybe 1 or 2 questions. And also, I don't know whether the graphical summary of Panos' presentation can be made available, if it's possible, if not. Are there any questions specifically?
Thank you. Good morning. Agnes Bocalon from ACR Plus. I was wondering what's the connection between the different tools that we have available within EUSO and the expected database that is required, well, it's in the proposition of the directive on soil data. That, to my understanding, that will be managed by the European Environmental Agency. So I just wanted to understand what are the connections.
Currently, the evidence, the scientific evidence was provided by us in order to have the proposal for the soil monitoring law. We expect when the soil monitoring law will be in place, EUSO will be the one which continue to provide assessments and evidence to support the implementation of the soil monitoring law. Of course, regarding the data flows, EUSO can be seen as a repository. We're in discussion now with the environmental agency if EUSO will take over this stuff to be the data repository of the data flows coming from member states. And of course, these things will be seen because we have some time to think of plans how we will implement it. Yes, Carlos. Or
Hi, Panos.
yes.
You accumulated, I would say, more than a decade of experience through Lucas, through the difficulties of creating databases that are more or less interoperable, to create an independent process that can inform policy. And many European countries don't have that experience and don't have that past. So my question is, how is the JRC, or let's say EUSO, prepared or preparing to support the countries in the implementation of the soil monitoring law? Because at some degree, they would benefit from that experience more than the 20% sampling that
Yes.
EUSO is going to be responsible. Yeah?
Yes, thank you. So EUSO has a certain experience on this, but on the other side, we see countries like France or Germany, they have experience also on data management, on monitoring, on similar, on sampling, etc. I see currently that EUSO or ESDAC sometimes provides data to countries, and the countries are using those data for the national assessments or for making some reports. But we expect that somehow the countries will follow our paradigm and our example and somehow replicate what we have done. But currently in this transition phase, I see that some countries will use what we have done at European scale. I know it's not perfect for reporting or evaluation at a certain point. Is it?
Thank you, Panos, for a very nice overview. It's so exciting to see all the data. In the UK, we've been doing soil monitoring for 40 years.
Yes.
And one of the challenges is the continual change in technologies.
Yes.
And our political masters tend to love the latest, sexiest bit of technical what's it. How are you going to help us all track, and not just track change in technology, but actually track change in real soil health? It's a real balancing act. I wonder whether you have a strategy for that.
I'm a little bit conservative in these things, even if my first degree is in IT, information technology. So I believe in technology. I believe that remote sensing makes a difference. We see that, and we use quite a lot of the remote sensing data, both indicators, but also in making assessments. But important for us is still the ground assessment. I mean, what we take as a sample. If there is an alternative, of course, this will help, or will be a mixture of technologies, technological solutions, but I find that still the sampling and the analyzing and providing, I mean, what is done in the lab is very important, what we see in the ground.
One final question.
Yes.
That was very, very interesting, a lot of information. From the mission board, what we can see is that there is this incredible amount of projects creating all these data. And there is a concern that we should help in having one project building on top of the other, so complementarity in order to have maximum impact. So my question is whether, because you will receive input from a lot of projects and we'll give them back data, and whether you can see your role also as trying to coordinate this complementarity between projects, and whether we can collaborate on that we maximize the effort so that the projects are building on what the others have done. Yeah.
Very important, and I think there, because sometimes colleagues see different, animals, we can say, like this, EUSO, mission board, etc. Sometimes confusion is easy to be seen. So I see that somehow we should organize in clusters, and these are, it should be a cluster on data, cluster on indicator, cluster maybe on carbon projects, or cluster on biodiversity. And projects, I see synergies between projects, because projects are, I don't say that do similar things, but complementarity is necessary. And by the way, we have a nice question here which somehow says, what's the difference between EUSO and the ESDAC? This was a confusion in 2020 when we have presented first EUSO. But after 2-3 years now starts being a little bit more evident the difference. Okay, ESDAC is an important part of EUSO, but EUSO does much more now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panos. I think we should move on there. And maybe just one final comment to Carlos. The JRC now will embark on a 10-year program to support the implementation of the soil monitoring law, basically. So long after I've retired, there'll still be work going on. So we will support member states as much as possible. Okay, let's move on then to the next part of the morning, and it's a workshop, as I said, co-organized by the Benchmarks and AI for Soil. And I pass over to Paolo to moderate the rest of the morning.
Thank you, Arvin. And first of all, I would like to thank the JRC for inviting us and for giving the opportunity to organize this session, and indeed, just to follow up the comment of Teresa, to collaborate and where you can show really complementarity between projects, so AI for Soil Health and Benchmarks. And with this, I would like to invite on stage Teresa Pinto Correa. She's a Vice Chair of the Soil Mission Board and a professor at EVRA University. For the next 15 minutes, she will introduce our session on the importance of soil scales on soil health indicators.
Okay, thanks, Paolo. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I would like to congratulate the Secretariat for having organized this, because it is really a great, great event. And I think it's extremely important for us to meet and to see all this enthusiasm and to exchange and look for complementarity. So that's, I think it's important to be said. So I'm going to talk about scales just a little bit. I was asked to present the mission. I'm not going to present the mission because it was presented already in the first day by Kirsten, but I would like to address a bit how I see, or part of what I see as a question for scales. So this we have seen, and I think what is important to stress is that this, the soil mission is very timely. We all acknowledge the need for more investment on soil and on soil regeneration. So we have seen this, and we are really timely addressing these with all these projects and all this information. And we have also seen the goals of the mission. And I think this also, as Thanos just said, you have seen the blocks. But I think what is important is that we are stressing on these living labs, and the living labs are, of course, looking at regional realities, regional contexts, maybe also local contexts. So it's a downscaling of the approach of the mission. And I think what we need to be aware of or call the attention to is that we have this construction of the living labs as a set of plots in a region, and different stakeholders involved, but the construction and the type of partners, they need to be adapted to each regional context. So there is no one-fits-all solution. It's not just a question of downscaling, but when you downscale, you adapt and you create something which is fitting to the region where you are. So we should look and have the flexibility to construct something which is adapted to this context and to the type of soils, to the type of problems by the land use systems, but also to the type of stakeholders we have there, not the least the land managers, which can be farmers or foresters or urban planners, but they are different and they have different stories and different narratives according to the region where they are. So why the local context is important is extremely important because there's the land management, which is something which very often is particular from our region. What is the knowledge base and what is the culture and the tradition which the farmers follow. But also because, and we have heard that a lot, that soil needs allocation, they are context specific. But also because, and we have heard Anna yesterday talking about the social sciences and humanities, and these are really factors and drivers that we can much better understand and address at this local level. And it's extremely important because if we have, at the local level, it's where we can have engagement, where you can have the local enterprises to understand what they can do for soil, the value chain actors, many of them are global, and we have heard about it. We have heard a lot about these global partners in the soil business or in the business model session. But some of the local enterprises, they also be important because they are providing inputs, they are providing knowledge, they are contacting with those who manage the soil. So this socioeconomic or sociocultural context, it's something which is particularly addressed at this local and regional level. And then building communities which are engaged on soil, it's also something you do regionally or locally. So in the mission board, we have a working group which has worked and produced a document as a set of guiding principles for what the living labs should be. And in the discussions, it was led by Muriel Mambrini, which was here yesterday and also talked about the living labs. But these are the set of recommendations which came out in this document, what could make a successful implementation of the mission. And as you can see, there are a lot of questions which are across scales. And what I will go to this scale question, because you have, the diagram was produced for something else, was produced to understand what was ongoing at the local landscape level between production and consumption or conservation at the landscape level. But it's the elements we have in this set of recommendations, which were discussed across some time in the mission board. These drivers of success, they are across scales. And I think we need to pay attention to what is it we can address at the correct scale. And they are not just directly linearly going from the higher scale to the lower scale. They mix a bit together, and influences mix when they arrive at the local level. So we need to tackle this complexity and also to pay attention that change cannot happen equally fast. If we create the right instruments, there will be regions and farms which can adapt faster than others which will not be able to adapt so fast because they cannot incorporate knowledge or they don't know where to get that knowledge from. So this differentiation needs to be paid attention to. We have the example of a project which is developed in Portugal by Carlos Guerra, is the coordinator. And what I would like to stress is this, what you get when you look in more detail. And I don't have the map, the European map that Thanos just showed on soil condition, but for Portugal it is a bit, the vulnerability here it's low in southern Portugal, but the soil condition is worse in the classification in southern Portugal. And of course, when you downscale, you get more precision and maybe you get different information. So this was done asking stakeholders to value different drivers of soil vulnerability. And then it was, the map was producing by a superposition of different dimensions of the soil. But what I would like to stress is this also, in monitoring, you have this, of course, most of you will be very much aware of this, but how much detail and different information you get when you downscale. And that same project is also been developing an approach which goes into detail in monitoring in northern Portugal, and hopefully we can do it for all the country. But what I also would like to stress is when you do this, then you can monitor not just soil and integrated soil factors, but you can monitor also who is managing and how it is managed. So you can make this combination in a much more efficient way, or a more in a way which is meaningful then for recommendations for management. So these are the points which are monitored with an incredible effort done in very short time for monitoring soil condition in northern Portugal. And different land use systems appear. When you look higher up, you will have only one type of land use system, but also you recognize and you find these multiple actors and you recognize their differentiation. And what I would like to stress is that you also find different farm manager types. So this type of differentiation is extremely needed. So what I'm showing there is the farm structure. In another region in Portugal, we have this bipolar organization of very, very small properties and very, very large estates in southern Portugal. But also you have these that you have small family farms, large family farms who have a lot of capacity, economic capacity to do investment, but also now we have all value chain actors like very big investment funds who are investing in farming. We have nature stewardship farms, which belong to associations, and they have very different capacities of reacting, of investment, of discussing with others. And this, what I think is that combining different scales means also that being aware of these differences in the management structure and make it possible that all are included and we are not just dealing with the usual suspects, which are those ones who show up to meetings and to stakeholder involvement, but all the others, they stay outside. So we need to take these ones which are less fit to the processes we are doing, but to help them also move forward for better soil conditions. So I had for short time, so I think the main message is, of course, scale matters a lot. Not all issues can be addressed at the same scale, so we have different scales need to be considered, so the right scale for the right problem, but always considering there's another scale. If we want to address those who manage soils, we need to look at the local level, and thinking across scales makes it possible that we really understand what are barriers or drivers or what makes it possible to change management of soils or not. So maybe, of course, but also, of course, we cannot consider every single farm. We need to make typologies, we need to group the farms, we need to create mosaics of soil conditions, so the soil districts or soilscapes. This is, of course, an approach which needs to be considered, but connected with that, I would say that we need to consider the community of stakeholders, which is also there at that level. So it's not just about soil types or soil groups, soil districts, but combine this with soil managers' communities, and then we come back to the living labs where these communities should be addressed. So we should be aware that at each scale you also have to involve the right stakeholders and combine them and get them all together. Okay, thank you very much. That was my lecture.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Teresa, to keep it very much on time. So we are perfectly in the schedule. So as you can see, Rachel already took her place on the podium. Rachel Creamer is a professor at the Soil Biology Group of Wageningen and coordinator of benchmarks, and she will introduce the project to you. Please, go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone, and many thanks for having the Benchmarks project here, and a big thank you to both the Benchmarks and the AI for Soil Health project teams for, just raise the microphones, for facilitating and helping organise this workshop this morning. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes. Well, I think actually Teresa just gave the most perfect opening talk we could have asked for, because scale does matter, and I think I couldn't agree with you more in the statements that you made there. I want to start this morning by just taking you through some of the sort of key objectives of the Benchmarks project, and then we will also talk a little bit about why scale matters so much. So this is the project team that we have behind us. And of course, the Benchmarks project is really about how can we define indicators that are fit for purpose. And we see from the discussions over the last few days that we have soil degradation that's really been seen as a major issue across Europe. And I know the numbers have been updated there. We now have a target of 2050 for 100%. But we really need to think about how we can transition our land management and our soil management towards healthier production, forest, citizen areas, urban areas, and nature areas. So how can we improve our soil health across Europe? But it's not just from a political perspective that this is happening. In fact, there are many organisations now coming together in cooperatives, in networks, that also have this ambition to work on soil health. And so we see more and more this pull from the food industry in particular that says, well, we want more regenerative agriculture. We want sustainable landscapes. We want healthy systems, healthy food, And this really needs to take place now. So it's interesting that we have this coming together, this convergence of both political pressure to sort of increase the health of our soils, and also the value chains and the big industries saying this is important too. So how can we do that? How can we bring all these different parties together and actually think about what can be done, and how can we underpin that scientifically? And I think that is a huge ambition that I think many of us in this room would like to support, which is really making sure that we have good scientific underpinning for the selection of indicators and for the monitoring of soil health, to ensure that what is done properly. So we'll step back a little bit. This is two studies that were done looking at indicators of soil health or soil quality, going back in time a little bit over the last 5 years. And I mean, both of them show that traditionally, of course, the focus was really on the soil chemistry. So thinking in terms of agronomy, in terms of productivity, we needed to know about the nutrient status of our soils to ensure high productivity, how times are changing. We then had the inclusion of, I think, soil physical parameters, and Panos said it himself, soil erosion really became quite an issue across Europe. And so we really needed to understand the physical status of our soils as well. Often it was deemed very laborious, very difficult, but of course the importance of it became more important. And then our poor soil biology, I'm Professor of Soil Biology in Wageningen, kind of got squeezed in a little bit. We threw in some earthworms because everybody associates with earthworms and feels good about them, but actually they're really not necessarily good indicators, not across Europe anyway, because they're not everywhere, but people do associate with them. We look then at things like microbial biomass, respiration. We see that also coming back in the soil directive. And again, these are very difficult indicators to apply. So they're well known. People think that they can relate to them, but they're not always the best indicators. So we need to improve on the soil biology. We also saw that spatially, there's huge variation. And I think that's what the Soil Monitoring Directive is really trying to solve, is this, that in some countries we have excellent monitoring systems in place. In other countries, nothing exists at all. So they're really starting from scratch. So we need better harmonisation across Europe in the data collection that's taking place, and I really commend the directive in terms of trying to achieve that. And of course, the Soil Monitoring and Resilience Directive has put forward some first indicators for the assessment of soil health across Europe. And I've kept it very simplified here to fit it onto the screen. But you can see, again, that we look at indicators that are trying to evaluate the vulnerability of soils across Europe in terms of the threats taking place and how we can capture that. But the Soil Monitoring Directive wants to do far more than that. It really wants to look at the functionality, and it wants to look at the health of that system and the potential. So we also need to include indicators associated with that. So where does benchmarks fit into this? Well, actually benchmarks wants to help support that selection of indicators, particularly looking at the delivery of soil functions or ecosystem services, as we call it. But we want to start from a different place. We want to be a bit difficult. We really want to start from the field, from the farmer, from the land manager. And I think Teresa just said it perfectly. If we want to change soil health in Europe, we have to start at that local level. We have to bring the people in who are managing those soils, and we have to make it meaningful to them, for them to want to change. That will then have the knock-on effect to help us increase the soil health of Europe. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we need to understand what the questions are. And for me, this is something that gets lost in discussions so often. Because we talk about monitoring, and we immediately think, oh, well, we'll have one sample every 10 kilometres squared or even less than that sometimes, but we think about national scale, European scale monitoring, and we produce data, and sometimes we hand this data over to farmers and we say, look, data. And they say, oh, right, and what do I do with that? I have, you know, several hundred different nematodes in my soil sample. So what? You know? But those nematodes are very important if you know who they are and what they do. And I think Wim said that yesterday, Wim van der Putten. So we really need to make sure that we make the information that comes from systems fit for purpose and actually meaningful to the people that are on the ground managing our soils. So I started, and we will have a panel later on to discuss this, but I started to try and think, okay, what could the questions be? So let's start at that European scale. If we think at European or national scale, what you want to know is the trends. How is soil health across Europe? Are there regions that we need to be really concerned about? Do we need an early warning system in place for some of these areas? What you don't need to know is if a farmer A puts cover crops in a field in this particular location, what is the result of that in terms of his nitrogen content for that season? But you do want to know where do we have problems occurring, or where is the potential and where do we need to really support? Industries then, well, they really want to know, how can I sell my products showing that these have come from healthy systems? They want to be able to apply onto the labels of the products that they're producing, this is produced in a good environment where the farmer cares or the forester cares and they've protected the environment and are not doing damage. Or they want to be able to link it to a success story. Consumers want to have that feeling when you go into the supermarket, and let's be clear, not all consumers care, but many consumers do care now. When I'm buying a product, do I look to see if the welfare of the animals has been protected? Do I think about whether it's, I think in the Netherlands we have planet proof. I'm not sure what planet proof means, if I'm completely honest, but, you know, I like to think that it's planet proof, so. But there are many labels being produced, there's many certification systems, so let's make soil part of that. But when it comes to farmers, we talk about certification schemes, and I mean, we're hearing about carbon credit schemes, we're hearing about hopefully biodiversity schemes. We talk about incentivization and supporting farmers, but actually farmers also want to know about, if I apply this practice, what does it mean? What is the trade-off with this other practice that I need to apply? They don't apply one practice at a time. We like perfect experimental setups that we can control everything and just look at one practice. That's not the reality. So let's give them the information they need. So that's what Benchmarks wants to do. We have Europe here at the bottom, but actually we're going to start at the top of this picture. We're going to start at the local level, and we're already doing it with forests, with urban systems and with agriculture, where we meet with stakeholders all across Europe, multiple stakeholders, and we ask them, what do you need from your soil? What do you want to do? And what information is meaningful to you? And how can we then find the right indicators? And that doesn't mean they get to just pick whatever they want because it looks good. It means that we give them the indicators that answer the right questions. And then how can we aggregate that? How can we then see, and Teresa again said it, at landscape scale, which could be soil districts, for example, with our soilscapes, we can look for the drivers. What are the drivers at landscape scale? You know, do we have high water tables? Are there slopes in this area? What are the climate distributions? You know, we can really think about key drivers there. And then we start going to the national and the European scale. So we aggregate this information up and we don't try and use the information down. So to do that, we have 24 landscapes across Europe that we're working with. And they vary in terms of agriculture, forestry and urban systems, and they're all over Europe. And when I say landscape case studies, we work with local farms, forests, urban areas, and then we expand out. So we really want to see what's happening in great detail at a local level, and then how can we bring this out to the landscape level and still understand the variation that's taking place. As I said, we've started with multi-stakeholder workshops. We've had a fantastic response to these workshops, where people have really come, and these are very different workshops, I think, to the usual form, or that's what we've been told anyway by the participants, because we don't present to them, we just ask them questions, and we get them to talk to each other. So we have multi-stakeholder workshops where we ask them, first of all, to collectively, all the different stakeholders from a region, what are the challenges that you're facing in this region in terms of soil health? What is the information you need? And then we ask them in their own categories of stakeholder type, what do you need as individuals? What does the farmers need in this region? Talk to each other. What collectively is meaningful to you in terms of soil information? And what do you need from the other actors in the room here? And the same with the policymakers and so on and so forth. And we actually really get discussions going. And it's been a really interesting experience, and I think we have 4 left to go before the end of the year, and then we will bring all this data together. So that's why we are doing what we're doing. But then how do we do it? Well, that's a challenge that Carmen here on the front row is facing. Thank goodness it's not me. Whereby we have to then do that scientific underpinning. So we're collecting all this data of what the needs are from the different stakeholders, from the different spatial scales, but then we need to make it meaningful. So we are really trying to define the objectives and the goals associated with those objectives, and then what are the soil functions or the soil-based ecosystem services that support the delivery of specific goals. So if we go to La Jonquera, for example, that Yannick has been presenting in the recent days, she told us that they really face a problem with water shortages. And they have huge erosion problems in the landscape there. So we need to make those the priority. In other parts of Europe, we have other issues. So we can really think about what are the functions that we need to further enhance or support in those systems, and how can we measure and assess those over time. And this is really based on some work that we did looking at the biology of integrating this and using soil processes rather than soil properties as sort of the fundamental underlying system of understanding it. I won't go into detail there because I don't have time, unfortunately. But we bring all this information together, we collect for each of the soil processes physical, chemical, biological information, as well as the management practices, as well as the environmental conditions, to define those indicators. And this will then all be put in what we call a logical sieve system, which will help us to define what are the measures of application that need to be implemented in order for us to be able to report back on something that's meaningful and fit for purpose at the relevant scale. It sounds easy. Good luck, Carmen. It's going to take quite a while, but she's well on the way, and these models are being developed. And I have to say, we have 19 partners in benchmarks, and we have great fun in online meetings where we are struggling to define all these different chemical, physical, biological processes taking place and how they all interact with each other. And they're very hardcore science sessions, but I think most of us quite enjoy it every now and again. But we don't just do this on sample base, and I was really pleased to hear that Panos said, you know, soil samples are still really important, but we also have to recognise that there's other ways of measuring. So actually what we do now is we also look at survey data, statistical databases. We're using space-based approaches, so this could be drones, it can be LiDAR, it can be hyperspectral systems and satellite information, and of course the models. And all this is brought together in order to provide the right information. And we will be testing that at the 24 case studies across Europe. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And now the last presentation of this morning is the presentation of AI for Soil Health, our sister project. and it will be given by his coordinator, Professor Mogens Greve, and head of the section of agroecology at Aarhus University. Please.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, now we are shifting completely scale. So I feel completely like a techno freak now on top of your talk, but you'll see. Yeah, so I'm going to briefly present the AI for Soil Health project. And our overall aim is actually to present the formation of sort of a technology, a digital infrastructure to evaluate soil health on pan-European scale, actually. So that's our overall aim on this. To do that, we also have different work packages, and we are working also with soil health indicators, of course, or descriptors, as they are called now in the directive proposal. And I just put in soil district. It was not in our application, but it was actually a very important input from the soil directive proposal. It has been in our mind from the beginning that we have to subdivide Europe in order to make some sensible benchmarking of soil properties across Europe. And it was really nice for us to see that it has such a profound role in the proposal. So it's really important, and it's going to govern a lot of our work in the next years. We are also trying to define new soil health proxies. There's been a lot of work done in especially the EJP project. There's been projects there who are sort of gathering all information on soil indicators, which has been done in the recent years, and it has been really valuable to harvest the information from the EJP project. But we are trying to take in a step further and doing some hardcore science in that part of the project. The last thing we are going to do is on top of on the data cube we have in the project, we are developing a soil digital twin, and this digital twin is basically constructed so it can actually interact with users, with end users of our system. It could be farmers, it could be as all soil managers and politicians, of course. The main outcome of our project is a data cube in the center of this slide, and that sort of governs everything we are working at, actually. We have, on the left side, we have some, I mentioned this indicator work. We are working on which indicators. We develop a pedotransfer function which feeds into the data cube, and we are developing sort of a benchmark system which can be used by land managers and soil managers to evaluate the state of their soil health. The digital twin part is on the right side here. We have end user can actually access the data cube through mobile apps. It can access the data cube through soil health tools online, and we can generate data layers directly from the data cube, and people can actually upload data and they can get response back from the analysis from the data cube. The coordination of the project is me, is Liz, and Isabella. Isabella is a project manager. She's my guardian angel, trying to get things running in a very busy day. So that's really nice. And Liz is a professor in my team, and we try to coordinate this together. We have very strong work package leaders here. Gustav from Sweden, we have Giovanna from Italy. We have Tom, who initiated the idea of the project, actually, and is the director of OpenGeo, who managed the core data set in our project. We have from Soil Association, Casey, Joe, and Julie from the UK. Really good partners from the UK we also have here. We have a bunch of partners, 28 partners. I'll not come into detail with these ones. And we have members from 14 different member states. And as a core of our project, we have the pilot sites, and we have 13 pilots across Europe, and we cover main pedoclimatic regions, I think. Each of the pilots have different roles. We have, for example, we have an erosion site pilot in Italy, we have a salinization site in Greece, and we have, in Denmark, for example, we have a peat site where we can address these different indicators which is relevant in different part of Europe. To give a brief overview on the organization of the project, the center of the project, we have this soil monitoring tool and services. This is where we have sort of the data cube and all the technology running. We have the interaction with the mobile app. We have the administration of the web services. In VP3, we have sort of the definition with indicators. We have the work with how to benchmark, how to index this. In VP4, we have the soil in situ measurements of the novel proxies here. Can we use field-based soil spectroscopy? Can we use different kind of DNA data? Can we use enzyme activity, for example? This work is done in VP4. We have the outreach in VP7, and we have the pilots and the multi-actor engagement in the VP6. And then we have the science policy interaction in VP2, which is Giovanna who takes care of that. So altogether, we sort of, I think it's really a good organization, and we're trying to run it forward as good as we can. We're establishing a soil digital twin, and that actually, if you see the green circle there, that's supposed to represent the real world of soils in Europe. And then we establish sort of a mirror of that in our digital data cube, where we, with a lot of different layers, between 200 and 300 different grid layers, we try to represent as good as we can the status of the soils and landscape in Europe. We have data on landscape types, we have data on remote sensing, we have data on topography, and all these are fed into our machine learning models to generate predictions of soil properties and soil indicators directly or indirectly by peer transfer functions. So these are the layers which can actually be accessed by the user, by the end user, through our mobile apps or through the web service we are establishing. Of course, this data cube is a sort of a top-down approach, and we can deliver analysis on pan-European level. We can deliver analysis on member states level. But we also have functions actually where the farmers can actually directly interact with our predictions across Europe. And Yannick from South Spain, she said she was missing data on soils and landscapes, and it will actually be possible for her to access data through this app or giving information on soils in her valley. In the beginning, of course, it will be associated with high uncertainty, our predictions, but as the monitoring data rolls in as planned, as described in the soil-directed proposal, the predictions will increase in quality as the year goes by. The work on soil health indicators, we have, of course, already from previous work and from all the EDAP project, we have proposal on very robust, good soil health indicators mentioned here, for example, soil organic carbon pH, bulk density of phosphorus. They are well-known, robust indicators. A part of the work in VP3 is actually to develop an evaluation scheme for indicators, which one is actually useful to use in a pan-European monitoring system. So the one we proposed, there was this list also from Rachel's presentation. We have this enormous list of possible indicators proposed by various scientists. They are all, if you're a soil physicist, of course you are interested in these ones. If you're a chemist, you have another bunch of lists, and Rachel, she is a soil microbiologist, so she has also a list. We combine all these lists, but we have to evaluate them individually and say which one is actually good for soil monitoring purposes. And we have to run through a step here. Is it relevant for the politics and stakeholders? Does it provide good signal-to-noise ratio? Is it good? Can we monitor this indicator? Is it possible to monitor it? And what is the spatial variability of the indicator? That's also very important. How much do we need to sample it? Is it impossible to sample to have a good cost-benefit analysis? There's also a time thing. It does, for example, if you take the rock content of a soil sample, that's really stable under centuries. But if you take soil microbiome, for example, that varies perhaps within a month. So these considerations are also very important when you choose the indicators here. There's also something about, is it easy to measure? Is it expensive to measure? That's also very important for a pan-European monitoring system. So all these things has to be put in together when we choose the final number or the final list of indicators used in a pan-European monitoring system. We also have a sort of a brainstorm in our project, of course. There's a lot of new ideas. You know, when you try to brainstorm with scientists, they go crazy. This is just a short number here. We also have variable information from scientists, of course, but here we have, for example, we have some kind of ideas that if you have a polluted soil, this will sort of imprint in the DNA of the microbiome. There's a proposal using water repellency as a soil health indicators, specific surface areas, the water flow and the air flow in the soil is also very important for soil health actually, but is it relevant as a pan-European soil indicators? So each of these proposals, we have a proposal for more than 20 in our project alone, and we are going to run this through our evaluation process and end up perhaps proposing one or two extra as a pan-European monitoring indicator. If we have this soil health index, which we have mentioned it a few times, how do we actually do a soil health index? It was proposed by JRC. They already have a classification system. And in the soil directive proposal, there's this one out, all out suggestion, and I don't think that might be a good idea. We don't think it necessarily is a good idea, but we need to come up with another system. And this spider web system is, of course, a way to do it. But that we are doing consideration in our project, and also we have to communicate with other projects also and JRC on what is actually a sensible way to do this. It's also depending on soil ecosystem services, of course. So there will be different indicators, there will be different critical levels according to soil district and ecosystem services. So it's going to be a complex matrix we have to deal with when we end up with this knowledge we get from these projects. The soil district is really interesting. There are some ideas in the directorate proposal, and we are trying to work with that. We didn't set our mind up how we're actually going to do it. We know it's something to do with the soil physical properties of the soil and the landscape. Here we have sort of a suggestion where the soil district is defined on the soil type, for example, and the land use. If we do that, then we can subdivide, for example, or look at soil data point in each of these soil districts defined by soil type and land use. And then we get this distribution we see here. This is from the UK monitoring system. So you can see here the orange part is 80% of the soil samples. Thank you. And you have 10% above and 10% below the majority of the points. And this is actually a very good tool to approach the farmer, because he doesn't like if we say it's an unhealthy soils. But if we put him here, we can actually directly compare his value through the soil app with all his peers, his neighbor. They have the same soil type, they have the same land use, but my carbon content is a little bit higher, so he can perhaps be happy. Or if it's the other way, then he needs to do something else, and then he can talk to Rachel what to do now. Perhaps I need to change land use to improve my soil health. So we are working with things in this direction. Just to give an example on pan-European, this is just a soil district proposal. We have a pot soil here in 2 different climate regions. We have one in Portugal and we have one in the Baltics. And you can see how the soil carbon actually differs in the 2 different soil districts here, both in terms of the districts, but also in terms of the land use. So it's just a comment to the proposal from the directive that we need a pan-European critical limit, and that doesn't work. This is a very good example on it. It doesn't work. We try in Denmark, we have a lot of data. We just tried to generate 10 districts in Denmark on the basis of landscapes. And you can see the carbon content, how it varies across Denmark. And it varies actually a lot. And even in Denmark, it doesn't work with only one critical limit. So we need to do something else. And I think the concept of soil district is just the way to go. We also are addressing the number of points we need to do sensible monitoring. There was a proposal in the monitoring law that we could calculate how many samples do we need to have a stable mean value in each of the soil districts. And here we have calculated the number of samples we need in the different districts to get a good stable mean value. And here you can actually see for soil carbon it's 155 points we need in Denmark, and for the carbon to clay ratio it's 92. So the monitoring intensity also varies according to what is our indicator here. Just to put it in perspective, there's 1,300 samples in the Lucas soil sample in 2022. So Lucas is actually vastly oversampling what is necessary. So if you want to do a cost-efficient monitoring, we need to go into the concept of soil district, and we need to do some very serious consideration about it. Because if we are proposing, I think they propose 5 times the intensity of the Lucas soil sample in the proposal, and that is going to be crazy expensive. And I think if we go down this alley, then it's actually perhaps feasible for most member states to do a very good monitoring. So this was the words for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mogens. I ask you to keep your questions for the next session, but Carmen Vasquez, my colleague, prepared 4 questions on Slido. So if you can go on Slido, we can start with the first question and you can select one. And then this is in preparation for the next session when we have a panel discussion with 9 different panelists, and then also in that moment you can ask more questions. Is the poll available? Yes. Question number. Is the poll available now, Carmen? I can start to read the 4th question. Well, what land use type do you manage or work with? This is only one possible option, and this is to have an idea who we are talking to today. there's anything on? If they're not there, yes, they are. Okay, please vote. And it is only one possible question. And it's to stress, maybe some of you work in different system, but we would like to have a bit to stress the answers a bit. And it doesn't go, no. Yeah, so at least to see the number of people voting, so I know more or less when to go on. At least, if not on the big screen, maybe on the small one. Do you know how many people are? Okay, let's wait. Maybe let's have. Okay. Thank you, Carmen. Okay, let's move on to the second question. This is a multiple choice, but you can only select 2 possible options. So next slide, please. Oh, for question 2. Yes. At what spatial scale would a soil health assessment be of most help to you? And again, Carmen, if you can tell me or give me. Okay, good, because going fast. And do we have some percentage? Okay, local scale. Okay, sounds. Oh, sounds okay. So local still like the one. Oh. Okay. So you have 90 answers. I think we can go to the third question, please. Or maybe Carmen, indeed, would you like to join me on stage?
Well, I think the microphone is good enough, and I can only see the answers if I myself answer, so.
Third question, what do you need a soil health assessment to inform you about? Again, 2 possible choices, and 4 options.
There.
No, you can, yeah, it's going fast, let's wait.
We've got close to a 50-50, where people want to be informed about the general trends of soil health in time and space at the local scale, and about the success or lack thereof of applying a new management practice. Those seem to be the 2 most important targets, with around 90.
Oh, thanks. Okay.
That helps.
Thank you. You can stay. Don't leave me. Last question, please. And then question number 4. How could benchmarking of soil health help you in the future? Again, 2 possible options that you can choose. I like other. Then would be nice to know. Oh, it's going down.
Yeah, so we've got 60% of people voting for evaluating the status of soil health in the region or country.
It's going.
Oh, it's changing.
Yeah, it's changing. So, but 60% almost to better understand whether the soil management practices I apply are contributing to soil health in my system as expected in my area.
Now, what I find interesting about this is that you can see we keep talking about benchmarking, but benchmarking means something different to different people. So that's also something for us projects to keep in mind. Which type of benchmarking are we talking about when we talk to stakeholders? What are they expecting and what can we deliver?
Okay, we have 95 voters. Let's arrive to 100, then we can close it and then we can have coffee break. But before that, we have important announcements, so don't leave.
Oh, 101. Someone wanted coffee.
Yes, great. So thank you everybody, and let's keep in mind your questions for the next session. Yeah. Before going for coffee break, I have some announcement. And if I can have a slide so I can remember. So there outside we have the photo exhibition and the two projects presenting today. So reach out to them. A project are Icelander and Lowe's, if I remember correctly. And then, most important thing, we have a photo all together. We will be around here, and I think I can give the word to the photographer so he can direct us, all of us together. So what's the best place to go?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. We're going to take a group photo now. So if you could all please sit in this middle section of the auditorium just for a couple of minutes while we take a group photo of all of you. And nice and tucked together, no empty seats, please.
Would you like to stay as sitting? Yes.
Yes, everybody sitting down here in this section, please. Sí, una foto de grupo. Así que, I'll try one from below. Will I appear in your picture?
Qué optimista te veo.
Vamos. As close to the